Hi, I'm Brian.
I'm Kaylee.
And today we're going to make our future child's bed. This is the beginning of our process, is a sketch, and this is just like a really rough idea of what we like. We talked about different designs and we like the curved back here, so we decided on a solid glue up for that piece, which will go here. And then these end pieces are going to look like this. As you can see, we kind of drew some wood types that we knew we had around. And the main bed we're thinking is white oak because we have a little bit of that around and we like the look of it. And then we have some really fun pieces that we want to highlight. So we're going to resaw some pieces to highlight in there that have some cool figure. And I think it's going to make a really unique piece that we'll be excited to show in the video. And so then in the tiny little writing down here, I'm getting ready to pull some pieces. Take video with this one.
I am taking video.
You are. So we're just looking for different pieces of white oak that we might have around. So this is one that was labeled white oak. That's one right there. We're gonna have some face glue ups to get these 2-inch thick pieces, especially those. And we need some wider pieces, which I'm gonna have to go in that back corner for. Are probably 10-footers, maybe even 11 there. So like this is a 5-inch piece, and that'll make 2 pieces in the headboard out of the 5 I need. This is a 6-inch piece, so there's 2 more. So we do have the headboard here. These 3 for the headboard. We definitely have enough white oak, which is really good. Project for these. They're kind of gnarly, but we're cutting them into the longest pieces are like 4.5 feet.
Yeah.
So these boards that like have big cracks in them and stuff, we can just cut around it really easily. Well, that wasn't that bad. So this stack here that we're starting with is going to be the back, which was that curved piece that you lean your back on. Side legs, side horizontal. This stock will be what? I don't know. We probably won't even have to use all this. I think, strangely enough, our random lumber is going to be really efficient for this job. I'm going to relay it so I can actually see it. I always call these stretchers, but I think, what am I trying to say?
Rail. Is it rail?
Rail. There we go. Now that we've picked the lumber for the main frame, we need to pop on over here and pick out some lumber for the panels, and that's going to be some really cool, unique lumber. So come on over here. Come on, follow me. There's so much to choose from. I think we're going to choose from over here, probably. The panels are going to be like 18, that says 18 long, so that front piece right here is long enough to be a panel.
We pulled the unique lumber that we think will be really cool for the panels, so the size of the daybed. This is some crabapple that we milled from Brian's parents' crabapple tree. Cherry, which we milled. This barnwood that we had planed out a while ago, but it's from my great-grandma's barn, so that little fun sentimental piece to put in there. Some walnut that we milled. Silver maple, which we milled. Beech, which we milled. So a lot of this lumber we milled ourselves, which is cool, and why we feel like it's a cool thing to put into the bed. Bird's eye maple, which was gifted to us from a great aunt.
You can
see like down in here all the...
It's rough cut, so it's not impressive yet.
Yeah, so we'll have to mill that up and show the impressiveness of it. And box elder, which big old tree that we milled up.
Now we need to break down some of this lumber, and we decided to put these very cool pieces off to the side, even though that's really what we'd like to dive into. But we honestly don't know exactly the size on those yet. So first up is just taking these biggest cords right here and starting to break this stuff down. after milling these, we remembered why these were the cast-off boards. And well, this one, just massive knot and huge crack in the end of the board too. And you know, those two things combined, I think made that one not great. But let me just stack some of these up so we can show. This one was pretty clear what the issue was. I don't know if we'll cut around that or what. We're hoping for 1 3/16 inches. We got the white oak boards all milled up flat, and it took quite a bit of work. There's a reason why a lot of people cut out these giant knots and this type of figure, because it warps the boards, and it typically doesn't make a nice flat board off the mill and from the kiln. So then when it's our turn to take over the board and flatten it, it takes a long time, and it's really rough on all the knives on the machines. But it makes for a really cool product, and these are flat now, and they're ready to be the back of the daybed. We don't have exact dimensions. Make sure we have the right dimensions, and then get some dimensions. And then we just need to run home and grab some it's ridiculous. And then we just need to run home and get some dimensions. That's it. Bye. Now we have some more detailed plans, and this feels good. I don't know why we didn't do this from the start, but here we are. This is our cut list, and what I'm gonna do, all of these, we're gonna go 2 inches larger than the lengths and just get all the pieces cut out. All these 2-inch thick ones, these 2x2s, are gonna require glue ups. We went with a mitered joint for the sides. So it's gonna be a mitered 2x2, and then the fancy pieces of wood are going to sit inside that, kind of get framed in. And then it'll have, on this, the larger drawing, it'll have this curved back, and that'll all be white oak. So I think this thing's gonna look pretty freaking cool. The journey of this frowny face board represents all the rest of the white oak milling that went into this project.
We have the pieces for the backboard right here. We laid them out. We like to kind of mix them around and see what we think is going to look the best. With everything, we like highlighting unique parts of the board, so we have a lot of really cool knots and figure. We have some figure here. We also have then like opposite visually, some figure down on that board. And then some live edge, number them. So 1 through 6, so that this layout doesn't get lost when we're doing the glue ups and jointer. And then these little symbols here are to remind us to joint the opposite faces of the boards so that it can get a good perfect as woodworking gets. Joint and glue up.
we're gonna be cutting this curved radius on the back piece, and we're gonna figure out a way to do that. There's some troubleshooting involved. I think we're gonna set a point somewhere out here and have a pencil on a nice piece of string or something. It should get interesting. Just gonna mark roughly center on here, and then I already drew a line down this that I'm gonna align it with, and that will let me put a pin somewhere out here, well, a screw, and then I'll put a pencil on a string, and we're just gonna see what that does for a radius. I've never really done this before, but it should work, right? We have this set up with a screw down at the end of the outfeed table there, and some rope we had laying around. We got a pencil, and we've got this roughly squared up with the back of the table saw, and then I drew a line down the outfeed table that is just roughly square, just to get me from kind of the middle of this back piece down to that screw. And I'm gonna just hold the pencil kind of like that, and we're gonna draw our radius. So let's see if we can do this on the first try. Trick is to kind of keep the same tension. That's the thing that's gonna be tricky, and I just went onto the live edge too. We'll double check this by checking how far down this piece we ended up, which it looks to me like we're gonna have to go a little higher, kind of like this. Looks like we are 5 7/16. There is where we want that line to come out. I don't know. I'm like somehow not pulling as much tension over there unless this board isn't the same width. 6 1/8. 6 3/16. We did this radius and we're thinking it's close, but we have not cut the sides to be square with another edge, and the pieces are slightly different lengths. And so we really need to get that all squared up so we know what dead center is and where to start our radius. And then we'll know for sure if we're hitting the right point at the edges. So we're gonna get out the track saw and clean up these edges and then come back to this and see if this is useful or if we need to try a third time. Divided by 2 is 26 1/8. Just double check that. Yay! There we go. Okay, ready? That went pretty good, I think. Let's see what happens if I just... I mean, shoot. It's right there, so I think that's a pretty good radius. The other thing that was really cool with this process is we realized when looking if this was wide enough that we don't need this whole bottom piece. And the reason that's cool is because this was going to be our front rail, but it is not wide enough. So we were totally planning to have to glue something onto this to make it work. But now we don't need that for the front rail because we can take this whole piece off. And it's even cooler because we already cut it to its finished length. So literally we rip this off and this will be the front of the bed. We need to cut these legs to their final size, and I actually took one of these and made it not square. I thought I did it with 3 of them, but it's just this one. So I don't know if you can even see it, but essentially it's just out of square. It's like instead of being here, it's here. So I'm gonna lose a little bit of thickness, but I've got a plan for that.
Next up, what we're going to do is work on the panels that'll go inside. So obviously we're going to cut these and make them shorter and whatnot and more to size. But we do this and then have like another one, and then this would cover like that.
So we're just gonna cut these all to uniform size and thickness and start trying to lay them out. We're done with kind of part 1 of milling all of this up. It cleans up a lot after the joiner, so like this box elder looks amazing. This is the first time we've seen this bird's eye maple piece. This has been floating around for a long time and we've been like, what are we gonna do with this? And this is kind of like that's the cream of the crop there. Next we need to resaw, get the pieces down about to this thickness. It's gonna be 3/8 of an inch, all the pieces. These are the side assembly support pieces, and I'm just hogging out some material so that the unique panels have somewhere to sit. I will explain this better in just a moment, but you can see I'm just using a single blade. Sometimes I find that's a little easier than using a dado stack, just for the time it takes to set up that dado stack, especially if it's only a few pieces like this. The panels are all prepped, and we're really excited with how this looks. It was so inconsistent while everything was sitting there, and we knew what they might look like, but now we actually honed in on the pieces we want in there. We left certain knots in and cut specifically to leave certain figure like this, or like leave this right in the center. So there was thought that went into every single piece here, and we're just really pumped about how this looks. These panels are sitting in here. They're in a groove that goes 3/4 of an inch that away and is almost the exact thickness of the piece. And then this piece just has a kind of a, what is it? This would be a rabbit, I think, taken out of it, or, you know, maybe I'm wrong. And then we just have them sitting here to give the concept of what it'll actually look like when this piece is dominoed in here, and then everything else is held to the back of that groove. Here it is. Dominoes are in, so we can view it kind of as a whole now. I threw a clamp on to close up the miters. We have 2 dominoes in the mitered corners. So I'm pointing the wrong way. There's one here and one on the other side. And then there's 1 domino in here. And then all the panels are sitting in the groove at the top. And then the back, they're still loose. So you can see they could come out here. But that is the general look.
I've been working on the panel pieces. We decided that some of these pieces, especially like this is the barnwood from my great grandma's house, and it has all the little wormholes. So I've been slowly picking out the little dust and crust. We decided to star bond it. We always like the black because it just kind of makes it have like a cooler look, and then especially something with this already has that black accent throughout it. We have that one, and then there's also working on this cherry piece as well. We got through the majority of the work for these little panel pieces that go on the side supports. We sanded them all. We rounded over the edges on the router. And then we chose to fill with Star Bond. We started to fill and dig out all the wormholes. And it was going to be a nightmare because we did 1 round and it wasn't filling and we had to dig more out. So we scrapped that idea and we cut a new piece and decided to lean into the wormholes because they're not rough or anything.
I just thought that was such a good idea on the interior corners. Okay, good.
Other way, right?
No. Yes. One wants to go, the other one doesn't really want to go. This is why that counter pressure is pretty nice. As far as this going, I think I just need pressure coming from both directions here. Yep. We had to create one extra panel, and we're gonna just zip you right through this here.
Is it gonna cut into this?
Huh?
Is it gonna cut into the knot?
Flatten it?
Is it gonna cut into the knot?
It can be a little hard to hear in a wood shop sometimes. So anyways, one more panel. We'll explain a little more about this in just a moment. We have all the panels in. We got one of the sections over here done. That's all glued and nailed from the back, and so I'll show you kind of how the process goes. We have some glue here, and we're just putting a dab of glue in this groove, and then this slides in onto the dab of glue, and then there's more glue, like a good chunk of glue underneath this one, where it just sits in this, and then we just shoot two little 23 gauge pin nails with this little guy, just to hold everything in place, and the glue is gonna do most of the work. We did run into an issue where we kind of just didn't measure things out perfectly, where this had 3/4 inch gaps, and we're like, that's perfect, that's really nice. And then we set this all up, and it was gonna be like 1.25 inch gaps between everything. And so Kaylee had been the whole time wanting to switch this piece right here, because there's two from the same piece of bird's eye, and we just didn't have the right thing. But we recently picked up this cottonwood that came from our old house. It was a tree that had a lot of mainly bad meaning, but good and bad meaning in our life. And so it's really cool to be able to put this piece in. The only thing is, this is not dry. It was sitting outside, and so it's dried some, and we cut off the part that was contacting the ground, but it's a little bit of an experiment because I'm sure the moisture content in this is significantly higher than the rest. That's that. This is our sample for the Festool knockdown connection. We get to use the domino to make this all fit nice and tight, but also be able to break down so you can move it instead of having it permanently put together. You cut 3 14mm dominoes in the end, and then you also cut one in the face here, and then this piece drops in there. You get your Allen wrench, and you can tighten this down, and it'll close your joint the rest of the way. Tighten it down, and then my last crank here, in theory, you see the gap fully close. And again, there it goes. So it closes this gap, and then what you have is an incredibly strong joint that you can wrench on, and you can't really get it to go anywhere. Because from the outside, there's nothing showing, and it holds everything together. So that's what we're about to do over on these two pieces. Extend my center line here on this middle domino out further like that. I need to mark 40mm from that location. That right there is dead center on the domino. So just to be clear what we're doing here, I'm laying out where this piece is gonna fit. So this piece is gonna go right where those crosshairs are, and I need to drill a domino straight down into this other hole so this can drop in and then something else can come in here and connect. Here it is. All dry fit. Well, it's not even really a dry fit because this is exactly how it'll fit, but it's fit together. We also cut these boards, which are going to drop in here. Just about like that. And then the plywood over here is going to drop onto those and support the mattress. Got a glue brush. We go over all the pieces, outward facing pieces, with the palm router and an 1/8 inch round over bit. This is just to give all of that a nice feel and to take off the sharp edges. After that, we sand everything to 180 before finish, and we do that with both the big Rodex sander and the smaller sander. And then lastly, we will go over everything with hand sandpaper just on the roundovers to clean those up. After a small amount of cleanup, we begin applying finish. We chose Rubio Monocoat Pure for this. We really like the Pure because it's pretty natural looking and it works well with multiple different species of wood. The finish is applied and we just need to wait about 24 hours and this baby can go together. This is a piece of beech that we milled shortly after arriving here in Traverse City. So this one's kind of cool. Kind of has that meaning of like, you know, right after we got here and something cool we found. Even before we really had the business, you know, back running up here. And we stabilized this void in there. So I really like this one. This is a piece of poplar which is kind of fun because it comes from our countertops that we put in our house in Mount Pleasant. And so it was a cutoff from that. The next one is a piece of silver maple that we milled from a really big tree that had tons of cool stuff. And this was just a cutoff, a smaller chunk. This is a piece of elm that we milled in one of our first milling jobs ever. And so this one is fun and kind of has, goes back to the beginnings of that. This is a piece of walnut that came from one of our various projects that used walnut, and it has a ton of figures, so likely we didn't use this board because it probably was not a very straight board. And this is a piece of ash that came from either our bed or our bedside tables that we built a while back, and we loved this knot, and so we filled this all in and made sure to highlight that near the center of the board.
So on this side, we have crabapple, which this comes from Brian's parents' house and their crabapple tree. A branch of the tree broke off and we milled it up. Right here we have bird's eye maple. This came from a chunk, we got a big chunk of it from my great aunt. We've been holding on to this chunk of wood, not knowing what to do with it because we know how cool it is. So this was a good way to force us to finally break into it and do something with it. And then this is cottonwood. This comes from the big tree that we had looming over us the whole time we were living at our house in Mount Pleasant, and we hated the tree, but it has a lot of just memories with it, so it was fun to add that in, and crazy when we milled it up how pretty it is. So that was like a fun little surprise and really pulled together this side of the panel. Then we have cherry from firewood that we had out back at our house in Mount Pleasant that we decided to mill up randomly. And then this right here is, we planed it, but it's actually some barn wood that was from my great grandma's barn and that we had sitting around. So that's a fun little addition. And then lastly, we have box elder, which was from a big milling job. A family friend, giant tree fell over in a storm and we went and helped them mill it up. And we were shocked by how crazy and colorful that was. So that has a good memory to it, and they all have good memories that kind of just add a unique piece to everything.
All the white oak in this bed was also reused or repurposed, you could say. It's all left over from a variety of custom projects and other wood that we've collected. And some of these pieces in the headboard specifically were way too twisted or cupped because of these knots in them. And actually the thickness that we initially wanted on this headboard, we couldn't even get with these shortened pieces because of how, I think the pieces are really cool, but there'd be no way you could get a 6 or 8 foot piece out of those. We barely made it with 4 feet, but it's really cool to be able to incorporate them in something like this. And now we get to look at them and look at all those cool things that are in the wood. And so all the white oak, all the panels, everything was either cut by us or repurposed from other projects. None of it was bought specifically for this.
For following us along on this journey of making this bed. We've had fun. We hope you had fun watching as well. And if you did enjoy it, like and subscribe, comment what you think about the bed, and we'll see you around.